The Cartoonerific Podcast is sponsored by the Wonderful World of Animation Gallery, home of rare and wonderful fine animation art. Visit their website at wwagallery.com. And for our Cartoonerific listeners, you will receive a special 10% discount off any purchase if you purchase by March 25th, 2024. Just go to wwagallery.com and enter code CARTOON10 for your 10% discount. Once again, this discount is only valid until midnight, March 25th, 2024. Once again, visit wwagallery.com.
The following is a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
Welcome to Cartoon Fun, it's Cartoonerific. Yeah! It's Cartoonerific.
Yo ho ho and a happy, happy day. This is Brian Mitchell. Welcome to the Cartoonerific Podcast, classic animated cartoons, and I am your host, as always. Well, this week we have part 2 of our interview with Mr. Bob Singer. He is a veteran of Hanna Barbera, UPA Studios in the 60s, and even Warner Brothers. And before that, he worked with Seamus Culhane on the Bell Science series. So he's back today for the part 2 of our interview. So that's going to be a lot of fun. In our interview, we were talking about Hanna Barbera. And Hanna Barbera did a lot of tricks to keep the animation moving. As you know, Hanna Barbera Studios worked in limited animation. So in order to produce these shows, they had to kind of use every trick in the book to make things work, from using cycles, held drawings, using maybe part of a body moving, like an arm or eyes or a mouth, with a couple of poses. And sometimes those poses would basically pop, meaning there'd be no in-betweens but in between those key drawings, or it would be a couple of drawings, maybe not a whole lot of in-betweens. It might be maybe 2 or 3, not like full animation, where characters generally move for every frame or every 2 frames they're moving. With Hanna-Barbera, you might hold the body and just be animating the eyes. So it's a lot more economical. But Hanna-Barbera, like I said, they did tricks. So, sometimes they would take the same piece of artwork and they would move the camera in on it and then retime out the drawings and the mouths and stuff like that so that they could get additional uses out of a scene. All these little tricks, camera moves, panning the background, just having the character kind of static, but maybe using the actual plate where the animation drawings would sit, they could move that up and down to give the illusion of the character walking. So a lot of tricks to make those shows work, but they knew what they were doing, and they did work, and they entertained millions of people, lots of kids, and many adults. Hanna-Barbera, they're really good at it. Bill Hanna knew what he was doing, and the animators there knew how to economize from working in animation for so many years. So that was the magic of that studio. Anyway, Bob Singer is coming up next. Stay tuned. Don't go away.
The Cartoonerific Podcast is now available on Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Alexa, TuneIn, Podcast Addict, Player FM, Apple Podcasts, and many, many others. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. A new Cartoonerific podcast is uploaded every Friday. And now it's time for our special Cartoonerific guest.
Well, as promised, here's part 2 of our interview with Mr. Bob Singer. Very enjoyable interview, and here he is. Bill Hanna must have really loved you.
I didn't have much to do with that. I was mostly working with Joe Barbera. I remember one year I went into Jane and I said, Jane, we have a problem in the background in the layout department. We're getting more shows in, and instead of 4 shows, different shows we do a year, we're doing 8 or 10, and they even got as high as 14 shows. I said, we have a problem with character design because up to now, each layout man is supposed to design his own incidental characters for his show.
Right.
And that slows everything down. And she said, would I propose to having a department? She said, go ahead, Bob, start it.
Wow.
And I discovered that the need for characters are in the storyboard stage after the script is done.
Right.
And if you do preliminary sketches for the storyboard man, then he has something to draw.
Right.
And even then, even the layout man can look at these rough sketches and use them in his picture. And then we would go ahead and do cleanups and have them distributed to all the animators and everyone else. So, and then we did finally have a lot of shows. And remember, Bill Hanna was very appreciative that we did that because we got everything out on time.
Right.
After that.
Did Hanna-Barbera use, did they have any generic characters that they might use from show to show?
Yes. We established as part of our character design department, every time there was a model made, it went into a library. So soon we had many, many different policemen, housewives, bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when a layout man had to design a character, he'd go see what policeman we had. He might use them again or might design a new one, but at least he had a uniform that he could use.
Right.
And so we had a very good file going on, not only characters, but also backgrounds.
Wow.
And so we built up quite a file. And that was done in the ink and paint department. They did it for us.
Right. I would assume that, Hanna-Barbera loved to use explosions. And because they would be fully animated, the explosion, but it would, they were interchangeable. You could use it from one show to another. Yeah. So I'm sure I'm sure there's plenty of stock stuff just lying around or filed.
You could say the same thing about sound effects.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
They had, Hanna-Barbera had a very unique sound effects library, which was, I think they had a sound for everything, and it was all, I guess, they had it, I think, on some sort of some loop system that were cartridges that they would just pull out, and they were just kind of pulling. I saw this. But anyway.
Well, that's how we got to do many shows every year by having stock sound effects, stock backgrounds, stock BGs, a lot of things for stock.
Right.
And we kept them all, and you reused them in other pictures.
When you were doing layout, did you have a list of stuff to pull from? I mean, did you have a book where you could go to, or I don't know how they would work that. Today with computers, you could pull up a file very easily.
Well, in the earlier days, as a layout man, I used to spend a lot of time researching by going to the Brand Library in Glendale, or going downtown to a book show where they had a lot of movie stills that I would rent.
Right.
And because I guess a lot of us did that, we had to find our research somewhere.
Right.
You can't just dream up a building or a fire station or everything had to look. Well, I have a story here on that.
Right.
Monty Murphy was a freelance layout man. And we were doing a show based on his characters. I think it's called Wait Till Your Father Comes Home.
Yes. Yeah. And that was a primetime show. And
so Evo Takamoto, who was running layout at the time.
Right.
asked him to do a police station backgrounds because we had a new show coming in using that. And what did Marty do? He went to the Hollywood police station and he spent a day just drawing pictures of everything he saw in each room.
Right.
So that everything looked authentic by the time we got it.
Right.
It was so helpful to have stuff that made it really feel like a police station.
Right.
But that's what a layout man had to do. He had to go out and make it look good by getting good research.
Right.
So that plus the stock background that we had helped a lot too.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, that's how we got stuff done so fast.
How did you like working for Joe Barbera? Because
he was a wonderful guy. I mean, everybody liked him, and around the studio, if you use the words Joe says, that was the authoritative thing.
Right.
Everybody would just, okay, Joe said, okay, we'll do it.
Right.
And every time I did a storyboard, when I was doing storyboards, he would call me in and we'd go over the board. And he was so good at picking out little pieces of dialogue and adding little bits of action to pick up the board. And I was so pleased that the boss was doing that with every board that went through.
Right.
And it added so much. And he was such a gentleman. I always thought of him as being our resident Gary Grant.
Yes.
Because he looked just like him, and the way he talked.
Right.
He had a lot of poise, that guy.
Right.
Handsome guy, too.
Well, he kind of, if you looked at Bill's office was very workman-like. And Joe's office was Mr. Hollywood.
That's true. Yes. A lot of good furniture. Sort of dark.
Yes.
It was very nice in there.
Yeah. Like a nightclub. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a tour of his office, and it was he was not in the office at the time, but his secretary gave me a tour. This was back in the 80s, and and it was just very interesting to go through there. I guess I was in awe being in Joe Barbera's office. Yeah,
he was a real gentleman, and he treated all of us with respect.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wait Till Your Father Comes Home. Did that only run one season? Do you remember?
I think so, just one. Yeah, there are a lot of characters. Even Jetsons did one season. An amazing fact, because for some reason, I guess the CBS didn't want to do it again.
Right.
Didn't order it.
Right.
But it was a groundbreaker, really.
Yeah.
Luckily, we had Homer Jonas on board, the layout man who was good with that style.
Right.
Homer was put together with Alex Toth because on pictures that Alex was working on, Homer was laying out the backgrounds, and then a messenger would take his work and send it over to Toth, who lived about 10 minutes away.
Right.
And bring back Toth to work. So he was going back and forth. But that was an interesting combination of two different styles working together.
Right. Jonas came from Disney, didn't he?
I imagine so. I don't know, but I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's amazing how the talent pool in Hollywood, a lot of Warner's people went to Hanna Barbera. I think everybody went to Hanna Barbera eventually.
We had a lot of freelance people because even though we had 45 people in the layout department,
right,
we ended up with 65 people doing layout. Some of them were in New York or other cities, San Francisco.
Right.
And they would send their work in, and we would put it into production. So we had a lot of people coming in and out, yeah.
Right. Did they have like some sort of a bonus system over there? Like if you...
Nope.
Nothing?
Nope. Not in layout.
Not in layout. So
there may have been an animation, I don't know, but in layout, no.
I know early on they were paying the animators by the foot. So the more you produce, the more they would get paid. But some of those people, like in the early days, I think before you got there, Michael Law did a lot of freelance for them. And I think he was working at Quartet Films, doing commercials. And then he was also moonlighting.
The footage system in most studios early on meant that by the time Friday noon came around, they had done all their footage expected for the week, and they would just take the afternoon off.
Right.
And they would drink and just whatever.
Right.
I remember at James Culhane, Benny Washam used to mix vodka martinis, I think, in a big bottle, and they would drink that all afternoon.
On Friday afternoon?
Yeah. Why work when you've done your footage,
Yeah. If you get your work done, I guess
right.
It'd be a nice little reward.
And Bill Hertz let him do it. I think he tried to stop that, but he gave up.
Yeah.
Just let them have their afternoon off.
Right.
Other things that I really shouldn't talk about.
Right.
I could touch on it if you want to.
Yeah, if you want to talk about it.
Well, I was running the layout department, and the work was getting to be very slow coming in.
Right.
And I found out that some of the people were taking breaks out in the cars in the parking lot and smoking.
Oh, okay.
And I called a being of that group, and I said, look, guys, the reputation of the studios have stayed. This is found out. So please don't do that. And by George, they did stop.
Right.
But it's sort of a secret I've held all these years.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they'll mind whoever they were.
That shows you that smoking pot is going to lower your thinking processes, and it's not good to do when you're working.
Yeah. I think it definitely reduces your productivity. I think you slow down.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. And some I know there have been some animators even from the golden age that indulged in that, and they felt that it was a way of freeing up their thinking or their imagination. But I had a few drinks one night, just a few drinks, and the next morning I couldn't function because I'm not a drinker. But
I think you get the hell with an attitude.
Yeah.
On things, just let things go.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
What was was there a favorite show that you worked on for Hanna-Barbera?
It's got to be Scooby. I just loved working on that show. Yeah. The reason is, there's cartoony, and then there's adventure like Johnny Quest,
right.
And in between there's this other style I call it comedy adventure.
Right.
Because it's sort of both. And that fit my particular drawing style to a T. I just loved designing characters in that style, like policemen and housewives.
Yeah.
I did a bunch of monsters for the show.
Right, right.
But that's why I found it very easy to do those layouts. The cartoon shows, I learned how to do them because, an artist has to be able to do any style that he is asked to. He has to, because a lot of us were just gypsies. We go from one studio to another.
Right.
And each studio had its own style, so we had to learn their style to work in their work.
Yeah.
So we had to become very versatile. We were.
Right.
But I think Scooby was the one I really liked. I also enjoyed the small short. We had Sinbad the Sailor came through, short series.
Right.
And that was interesting too.
What show is this now? It's
called Sinbad. Sinbad the Sailor.
Sinbad the Sailor. Was that done at Hanna Barbera?
Yeah, we did those, but they were done elsewhere by someone else.
Oh, I see.
And a man named Sam Singer, no relation,
Right.
was the producer of those.
Yes, I remember those.
So they came in and we did a short series with Sinbad and his parrot.
Right. I'm trying to think. Wasn't there a show called Sinbad Jr.?
That may have been the show, Sinbad Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now, yeah. Yeah, I think, Scooby, I remember watching it as a kid, and I was the tender age of, I think, 8 when that came on, or maybe 7. And I loved the show. I still like the show a whole lot, and it's I think it was it Ruby and Spears were writing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they were writing, and then they produced shows also later.
Yes, they had their own studio, which became part of, I guess, Hanna Barbera later on. But they were basically they were writing for Scooby, and the shows are fun. The shows are a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's why it's lasted all these years. There's a good sense of they seem very fresh today. The styling of those shows, and the stories are light, but they get serious. They get for a limited animated series, for a TV show. It sure has a lot of action to it and a lot of fun.
The show was created by Solomon asked the show up in the studio to come up with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because in those days there was a lot of violence in cartoons.
Right.
And he thought that perhaps we should lighten it a little bit and get something lighter.
Yeah.
Not so, but we understood that there was a lot of shows that were radio TV shows, like the Oliver Mystery or Dobie Gillis show,
right?
Live action.
Yes.
So they designed it after those type of shows, with a light mystery show where we found out we had a bunch of kids in a car solving mysteries.
Right.
In fact, we did another show called Clue Club with the same format.
Same formula, yeah.
Yeah, so
I never thought. I'm sorry, I never thought of the Dobie Gillis thing. But then again, Shaggy is almost like a Dobie Gillis type
Bob
character.
Denver,
yes,
was the artist who had that character.
Yes.
So I think Shaggy was modeled after Bob Denver. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't go with Bob Denver for the voice, and they went with Casey Kasem for the, which he works really well. I've always loved the character. Do you know if they tried to get like Bob Denver down to try the voice?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
I doubt it, because they had the regular stable of artists, voice artists, Junior Foray and Don Messick.
Right. Later,
and others.
Paul Lynde in the 70s, they ended up using him.
That's right.
I guess,
yeah.
Well, they used Paul Lynde, I think, in, I know they used him in Charlotte's Web. I don't know if that was the,
yeah.
Yeah, because they ended up using him for so many other things after that. But I know they used him in the 60s for the Pearls of Penelope Pit Stop.
Oh, yeah, that's possible, yes.
Yeah. So I think, but they ended up using Paul Lynde a lot for a lot of different, he's kind of a forgotten name today.
Oh, he's been so good. I think he's gone now.
He's long gone, but he was an excellent voice.
He was so good.
Yeah.
We had trouble with the Scooby shows when they were sent overseas to be animated.
Right.
They began to come back with a lot of mistakes and bad animation. I think they had high school kids doing animation over there.
Wow.
Because they were so badly, they could not draw.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one with Sonny and Cher, that was the worst one I've seen. I just get very embarrassed when I see that.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, the fact that we had a lot of mistakes, a new type of TV show has been on the air called Scooby Mistakes. They were showing all those clips of the Scooby show that were bad.
Oh God!
And they were making fun of it, but a lot of people loved to watch that stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had to send them a letter, or not a letter, but an email, telling them how I'm sorry and I explained why the mistakes were made. The work came back from the Far East too late to fix because of the deadlines.
Right.
So, Buddy Gessler, who was running the studio, was very concerned about the deadlines because of money.
Right.
And he used to say, I don't care if we just show sprocket holes. That show is going on the air.
Right.
I heard him say that. But that was the attitude. We just could not fix it.
Yeah.
Too bad.
It is. It is. Do you know if he started, if they started sending the work over because of the budgets of the show, or
they seldom, they could not turn down a show. Hanna Barbera could not say, no, I can't do that show. They just took it. And as they got more shows, they expanded. In fact, Bill Hanna established a studio in Europe.
Right. So it was a matter of the volume then. It was the volume of the material that forced them to. It was
Australia, not Europe.
Yeah.
So they began to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And at one point, they had 14 different shows with 13 segments apiece.
Mm-hmm.
You can do your math on that. You see how many shows we had to get out in just a few months.
Yeah, it just becomes
cumbersome.
Yeah,
it's
just too much.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time. They say, why the early Hanna-Barbera shows so much better? And I said, well, probably due to the fact that they just had so much they had to get out that it was like, you're not focusing on quality anymore. They had
in the early days when they started the studio, they had the MGM crew with them, the same animators.
Right.
And who were very, very excellent animators.
Yes, they were.
And that's why these shows, although they had to do the very limited, Joe put in good dialogue. It was like the Flintstones. If you watch the Flintstones, you turn off the picture and then listen. You've got a radio show.
Yeah.
You can enjoy the show just as the way it is from the soundtrack.
Right.
So that's what happened. They introduced a new type of show.
Yeah. Right.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally understand that. They were, I guess, Chuck Jones criticized them at one point. He said, they're doing illustrated radio.
That's right. They were, but it worked.
But it worked. Yeah.
Yeah. You got some humor in there, not just from the action, but from the voices.
Right.
The dialogue, yeah.
So if they got a animation in there that was funny, it just added to the fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And they did it very well. I have to say they had it down to a science. Even though some of that stuff is not perfect, but the shows still play. They still play well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Is there?
Yeah, I enjoyed my time. I was there 27 years altogether.
When did you leave Hanna-Barbera? You worked on all this stuff through did you work on the Smurfs at all?
Oh yes, I did. In fact, Peyo, who was the creator of Smurfs, came over here, and from France. Was it France or? I guess it was.
Yes.
No, it wasn't France. It was
Italy,
Belgium.
Oh, okay. All right.
Anyway, and he brought his art director with him. And, we had a meeting, me and Ewo and one other person, and Joe, with Peyo and his sidekick. And Peyo was very interested in getting good quality. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, I heard stories that he was very unhappy with our product.
Wow.
And he didn't like the idea of having a Smurfette. which I think we put in
Yes.
the show because we needed to have more plot devices. So we had a female.
Yeah.
But I think Peo was not too happy with that.
Yeah, I think that was also network interference on the shows because they probably felt, well, you need a girl in there.
It really worked like putting a dog in the Johnny Quest show was, I think, it may have been Silverman's idea, or maybe it was Joe's idea to put a dog in just for humor.
Right.
The Quest show has very limited humorous episodes, and so the dog helped a lot to relieve the tension from the serious part.
Absolutely.
And Dick Bickenback was the one who designed Bandit, the dog.
Yes, he was an amazing talent.
He was the whole thing. He and Jack Huber would do the Flintstones layouts every week. As long as I was there, they were doing Flintstones.
Wow.
And but he was a wonderful drawer. And I've seen some original drawings of his. I couldn't believe how right on model and beautifully drawn. How good he was.
Yeah. I've seen his Tom and Jerry layouts from the 50s. And they're absolutely brilliant. And
well, that would be there were character layouts.
There were character layouts, yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Joe had his hand in all of that.
Yeah, I believe it.
Joe would do storyboards for those early Tom and Jerry's.
Oh, I know. He was hands on.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's why he was able to look at our storyboards and make little drawings and correct them. He was still doing it.
Yeah. That's,
so good.
If you think about it, it's kind of amazing. Here are these two guys running this giant animation studio, producing maybe not 14 shows, but quite a few shows every year.
6 or 7 probably.
On average,
4 to 7, yeah.
And each show with 13 or more episodes. I think some of them went up to 17 at one point, or 22, maybe with the Flintstones.
I think there were 13 Scoobies.
Yeah.
Or 12 or 13, yeah.
12 or 13. But when you think about it, just supervising one show to have, because it's and in animation, it is a mammoth operation. I mean, I know everything's broken down, one department has it for a couple of weeks and another department has it for 3 weeks, and then you send it to layout or whatever, it's
assembly line style.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they had some very good producers.
Yeah.
You had Dick Nichols and another name I'll try to think of, Timing Sheets all day.
Right.
So we had some very excellent people doing things.
Yeah, Alex Lovey was there directing too, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was a director.
Right.
And we had several others who were former animators or layout men working, and everybody was pretty much expert.
Yeah.
In those early days, until we enlarged too fast.
Right. I heard that a show came back. It was horrible. And it was, I don't think it was animated in the U.S. I think they sent it out. This is one of the later shows that they sent out.
You're talking about Jetson, I'll bet too.
It might be. I don't know.
It was sent to the East, to probably Japan or wherever.
Right.
And they sent John Crisfalucci over to run it. But the trouble is, John would rewrite the stories and put in animation that wasn't called for the board.
Right.
So that was the trouble with the Jetson show.
Yeah.
And they had to send somebody else over to straighten things out.
Right.
But Chris Felucci turned out to be a real talent with his own style.
Oh,
and
sure.
became very successful. Yeah, it was good. But it was probably not right to get in harness with somebody else's show. It's better if he does his own work.
Right. Well, I heard it's not about the Jetsons show. There was some of the show that came back. It was an action show, and one section came back. It was bad. It was things weren't working. Some of the animation was really poor, and I think Bill pulled in a few people, and they did some fixes in the studio, and they did quick cuts, and they did some explosions, and they they jerry-rigged the sequence.
Yeah.
And then I think they had to show it to Fred Silverman. And somehow the thing got by, and he loved it because they added a lot of sound effects to it, and somehow they were able to make the thing work. But that was Bill Hanna going in and doing his.
Yeah, I don't know what show that was, but I'd sure like to know.
I heard the story, and Silverman came by and he looked at it and he said, "Oh, that was a great show."
Isn't that lucky?
Yeah. Anyway,
well,
what was the last thing you worked on for Hanna-Barbera?
It might have been the Smurfs. I got an offer from Marvel, so I quit.
Right.
After 22 years, I left and went to Marvel for only 7 weeks, I think.
Right.
And I was not too happy there. I didn't have a slot. I wasn't sure why they wanted me. Anyway,
right.
The man who owned the Smurfs, Nickenbaum, I think his name was,
right,
opened up a studio to produce new shows. And we worked there for 7 months. And then I got into business when they closed down. And I had my own company for about a year.
Right.
And I went to New York at the Toy Fair. I had two partners.
Right.
And I was approached at the Toy Fair by Hamilton Projects, who did a lot of stuff for Hanna Barbera books.
Right.
And handled artwork. So they asked me if I would produce 6 books on Hanna Barbera characters.
Oh.
And I had never illustrated a book before, but I said, sure, we can do that.
Right.
And we did. And they gave us 8 months to produce 6 books, 48 pages each, with all the artwork. And I had a freelance to everyone I could find. I had 34 people I had to use to do layouts and paint backgrounds and do the inking and coloring and someone else to do the type.
Right.
And we did it in 7.5 months. And
wow.
I really, my wife was so upset that I was putting all this money out.
Right.
And I said, well, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Because I learned how to illustrate books, which was a great experience for me to supervise a large project and get it done.
Oh, sure.
And I was pretty much pleased with the whole effort.
Right.
But I was glad to do that.
Well, that's neat.
So then I went back to the studio. Joe Barbera was developing the Tom and Jerry Kids show, and they asked me to do a storyboard, the first storyboard for it. So I did that, and then Joe asked me to come on staff again and do more boards on it.
Right.
So I worked for 4 more years at Hanna-Barbera doing storyboards.
Oh, wow.
I really like that. I loved doing it. I'm
sure Joe was pretty much very much involved in that show.
Oh, he was. Yes, he was.
Was he looking at everything, or?
Oh, yeah. He would call me in every time I do a board.
Right.
He'd call me into the office and we'd go over it page by page, and he would make a few corrections. And I really enjoyed those times with Joe.
Sure. Yeah. Is that the last thing you worked on over at Hanna-Barbera?
Yes, that's when I retired at age 66.
Wow.
I retired, but I took a lot of material home with me, model sheets of shows and books, and I decided to do pick up commission work.
Right.
And I ended up doing a lot of. While I was there, I guess it was 86 or so.
Right.
Joe Barbera suggested to a new department they were doing. They had the Hanna Barbera stores open, and they needed new product to sell.
Right.
And they asked me. They wanted to do commission work of new artwork to be printed and sold at the shows. So, Joe Barbera suggested they come to me, and I said yes, and I did the first 12 of them. Layouts. I did the final drawings for limited editions.
Oh, the cells, or
cell or background. Yeah.
Wow.
They were sold in the stores in frames.
Right.
And they did pretty well. And after I left, Ruth Clampett was doing those because they closed down the department after 12. She picked it up and asked me to help her design more limiteds that she would supervise. And then when I was visiting a Hanna Barbera store in Hollywood, several times to see my work up on the walls, I always loved doing that.
Oh, sure.
They said, "Bob, would you like to do some personal appearances?" I said, "Oh, yeah, sure." So I've done over 45 appearances since then in various places.
That's neat.
And they would pay all expenses. And I would go to New York, Chicago, I'll go to Hawaii, England. They sent me to Australia.
They sent you to Long Island. Didn't you go to a gallery out?
Yes, I did do one in Long Island Gallery.
Yeah. I kind of remember that. I think they were advertising it that you were going to be in Westbury, New York. I
was always a very shy person, and when they asked me to take over a show like Space Ghost, I said, "You mean want me to tell people what to do? I've never done that."
Right.
That was a big challenge, but I managed to get that done.
Right.
And then when the studio sent me overseas for these appearances, I had another challenge speaking to large groups of people. And I learned to be relaxed and put across my thoughts by, picking out one person in the crowd and talking to them about it.
Right.
Or looking at somebody else. And with that one-on-one experience, I became much more relaxed. And I was able to do that. And I had I developed myself from being shy to being more open to talking to groups. It was a good thing to happen to me. I'm very proud that I conquered a problem I had.
Well, I always think when people come out to see you, they're there because they're excited. They're excited because you're representing part of their childhood, or just being big fans of these cartoons, and so they're happy to see you. So they're just you could flub, you could trip, you could they're going to love you. So it's always a great thing to do that type.
It was always an interesting, enjoyable experience because they learned a lot about animation and about the studio.
Yeah,
because I was talking about my early life, how I got into animation. Pretty much what I'm telling you. Except for the stuff we don't talk about.
Right.
Anyway.
All the stuff we don't talk about. Yeah. So.
But they were very interested in, and I realized they're not judging me; they're listening to my words.
That's right.
And enjoying what I was talking about.
Exactly.
So that made me feel more.
More at home.
More not so uptight and relaxed.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well,
and then I began to draw pictures for them too while I was there. And in Australia, they had me in this room at a table in the back room, and there were people lined outside the door coming in to want to see me, and I would draw a picture for them, and they would talk to me. And it was really a terrific part of my life.
Oh, sure. Well, when you're sitting in a studio and you're working on this stuff, you got the camaraderie going on between the people that are in your department and outside of your departments and stuff like that.
But we don't realize all the people out there looking at our cartoons and enjoying them.
Exactly.
We didn't realize that we had a big fan base out there.
Oh, there's a huge fan base out there. A lot of people a lot of people just want to hear about this stuff. That's why this podcast exists, is so that people can listen and they're excited to hear this stuff. There's stuff that's put out by the studios that it's what the studios want you to hear, but people are interested in what happened behind the scenes and how you got into the field and the interactions with different people and stuff. And
they're still making requests of me of Scooby and Tom and Jerry and also Johnny Quest.
Wow.
After all these years, those shows are still very popular. Scooby was, I think, more popular than Mickey Mouse after a while.
I think it has tremendous popularity, and I think that I hate to say that Warner Brothers is not really positioning the characters in the proper light lately, and I think we talked about that a little bit, where they're trying to get into changing them, redesigning them. But people are in love with those original creations, and maybe you could tweak them a little bit to bring them up to, the 2023. But I think when you have something that's working, I think it's a good idea to just let it keep doing what it's doing, because people.
Yeah, I still feel like I have to carry the torch for the Hanna Barbera style and try to be on model as much as I can with all the work I do.
Absolutely.
I just enjoy the work I've been doing. I had such a good time. I was very fortunate to find animation.
Yes.
Really, it was. And I talked to a lot of guys who will agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
And if we didn't have that, what else would we be doing? Because much of the artwork is done back east,
right,
in Chicago, New York, and there's not a big effort out here, except for the studios. Maybe you mean the live action studios,
right.
Illustrators.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say we were very lucky to have had animation in our lives. And that's what I told Alex Ignatieff, one of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I told him that, and he certainly agreed with me.
I absolutely agree with you. That.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing now? You're doing commissions now, right?
Yes. In fact, I'm doing still personal appearances. On the 15th of April, I'll be at the Van Eaton Gallery there.
Oh, Van Eaton. They're in Sherman Oaks. They're in Sherman Oaks, California.
No, now they moved to Studio City on Ventura Boulevard.
Oh, okay. All right.
And they bought this Pier 12 or whatever the name was building, and they put in. They're much bigger now. I understand.
Right.
A bigger room. And they have hundreds of pieces of artwork.
Right.
It's amazing what they have. And they have some of my stuff, and I did some new drawings, and they have bought some of my drawings to put up for sale.
Right.
As part of the agreement to go.
Right.
And so I'm all set to be there on Saturday the 15th.
Oh, that's very neat.
And I'll be there from 2 to 6.
Okay. You said April 15th?
Yeah, it's a Saturday.
Okay, and you said 2 to 6.
That's right. I'll be there and meeting people, and maybe I'll do some drawing for people if they want that.
There you go. Wow.
And I still enjoy doing that.
Well, good. Keep drawing.
I have a 95-year-old body, but my head is still 75.
Well, I think you're younger than that. So. Anyway, Well, if you happen to be in California, in Studio City, California, it's in Los Angeles.
Area. It's north in the valley.
Yes, the valley. You can meet Bob Singer. So April 15th and 2 to 6 o'clock at the Van Eaton Gallery on Ventura Boulevard, right?
Yes, it's 12061.
10261 Ventura.
No, 12160 Ventura Boulevard.
There you go.
Yeah.
Bob, thank you for coming on here. You are a legend. And
that embarrassed me a little bit, I tell you. I don't know what that means, but I just feel so happy that I was able to. You can't beat it, Brian. Mm-hmm. Drawing pictures all day, that was your career.
Yeah.
You can't beat.
No, you can't beat it because you're having fun.
You know the feeling, sure.
Sure, yeah. You do a drawing, it's and then it gets put on a screen, a television screen or a motion picture screen, and you're seeing your drawings up there, and it's
quite a thrill when I first saw my work on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, people are enjoying it, and we've enjoyed your work all these years, Bob. So,
well, thank you, Brian. I'm glad I speak to someone who works in the business too.
Thank you for coming on here, Bob.
Thank you. I was glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Do you have any questions or comments about the podcast? Please email Brian at cartoonerific.com. Your email may be featured in one of our future shows.
I've always said that there is good full animation and there is bad full animation. Same thing goes with limited animation. Limited animation could be really pretty bad, or it could be really, really good. So we were talking about a bunch of productions on last week's show and this week's show that Mr. Bob Singer worked on. Gay Paris is an excellent film. It's wonderfully art directed. The Famous Adventures of Mr. Magoo, which came out of Magoo's Christmas Carol, the success of that. Those are excellent shows. They're half-hour shows that feature Magoo in a different role, and really well done, well directed by Mr. Abe Levito. And then there's Charlotte's Web, which is a Hanna Barbera production. So you should check those all out. If you really like what you're listening to, please subscribe or tell a friend. Let them know about the Cartoonerific Podcast. Anyway, I want you all to have a great day. I want you to have an excellent week. And thank you all once again for tuning in.
This has been a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
The Cartoonerific Podcast is copyright 2024 by Cartoonerific Studios Incorporated. All rights reserved.